Hello, guys. Welcome back to the MMA Sucker Podcast. My name is Frazer Krohn, and I'll be breaking down the UFC Fight Night from Singapore, having a little look at Usyk versus Dubois that happened, obviously, sort of later last night from Poland, and a little look ahead to the UFC Fight Night that's coming up in UFC Paris. Um, Jumping straight into the UFC from Singapore last night, obviously in the well, I say last night, it was a strange time for everyone involved, but in the main event, we saw Max Holloway dominate Chan Sung Young, the Korean Zombie. Holloway notched his first finish inside the distance since 2018, when he obviously finished Brian Ortega, and even that was a doctor stoppage. It wasn't sort of a clean knockout punch, and we saw Korean Zombie retire. Now, I don't think this came as a surprise to many. Like, the result didn't come as a surprise to many, and nor did Zombie's retirement. I think we all kind of had it in the back of our minds that Zombie would be retiring after this fight. But it was the performance from Max that I think was particularly good. He did something I want to touch on when I go on to talk about Usyk and Dubois. But he constantly interrupted Korean Zombie's attacks with, you know, just a jab to offset him, or a jab or a jab and straight and a combination down to the body, and it constantly put off the Korean Zombie's attacks. It constantly kept him kind of guessing. I just thought it was a really, really good performance from Max Holloway. I think the context is really big in this. Obviously, you're in Singapore, and the sort of everything that's going on in Hawaii for Max Holloway is got to be playing on his mind, and he obviously dedicated the win to the Hawaiian people. But I just want to talk about that third round a little bit. Obviously, it didn't, the official finish is 23 seconds into the third round, but I think, Zombie had been dropped in that second round, and I thought that might, I think it was Mark Goddard, the referee. I thought he might step in and call it off then, but the fight was allowed to continue, which I'm not, I'm not mad about. I think, Zombie showed that he still had some of his faculties about him. Max jumped on. It was kind of, I think it was an anaconda. It was a anaconda kind of Darce looking submission. I didn't have the commentary on, so I wasn't 100% sure, but he wasn't able to get it, and I think he just showed his sort of, at 31, despite the fact he's only 31, he showed his kind of veteran mindset of, look, I'm not going to get this finish. This is Max Holloway. I'm not going to get this finish. I'm going to bail out of the submission. I'm not going to burn my arms out. We've potentially got another 3.5 rounds. I don't want to, build up all the lactic acid in my arms. And it's a very good decision in the end by Max Holloway not to pursue that submission. And obviously, he saw out the round, probably a 10-8 round in my opinion. And then that third round started. Zombie just kind of threw caution to the wind. I think he, in the back of his mind, knew that, look, I'm being outclassed now. I was dropped heavy in that second round. The first round wasn't particularly competitive, in my opinion, either. I think Max just got, he struggled to find his range a little bit, but once he'd found his range, it was the Max Holloway show. What I would say is that third round, why not? We always get frustrated at fighters that don't go out there and just leave it all out on the line. And he did that. Zombie did that. He went out there. He just threw caution to the wind. If he catches Max Holloway, he probably puts Max Holloway to sleep. That's how heavy his hands are. With that being said, Max showed and proved once again that he's got a phenomenal chin. And the finish for me was just classic Max. He just gets out the way enough to land that big right hand, knocks Zombie out, sends Zombie crashing to the ground. Really big win for Max Holloway. We'll go on to talk about what's next, but I just want to reflect on the career of Chan Sung Young a little bit now. 36 years of age, retires with a record of 17-8. 6 wins via knockout, 8 wins via submission, 3 wins via decision. He's lost by TKO or KO 5 times. But I think you've got to take into account just how good Korean Zombie certainly was in his prime, but just he's fought a who's who of top class mixed martial artists, and when we say a who's who, we really do mean a who's who. the guy was around in the WEC days for a start. Excuse me. He was around in the WEC days. He joined the UFC when the WEC was taken over by the UFC. On his debut, hits a twister, the first ever in the UFC. It's just a phenomenal. I don't think we appreciate Zombie for what he was. He then went on to defeat Mark Hominick by 7-second knockout. And then he's defeated. I think a lot of people forget this. He choked out in a main event. He choked out Dustin Poirier by a D'Arce choke. Yes, he went on to face Jose Aldo and lose that one in the fourth round by knockout. With that being said, that's a prime featherweight Jose Aldo who, Zombie was just another notch on Jose Aldo's record, as it were. Around that time, Jose had just gone 5 rounds with Frankie Edgar. After that fight, he went 5 rounds with Ricardo Lamas. Then he went 5 rounds with Chad Mendes before, obviously, the Conor McGregor fight. But Korean Zombie is one of the best fighters to compete in the featherweight division, without a doubt. Obviously, he went off for 2 years and did his mandatory military service. And then he returned with a first round knockout over Dennis Bermudez. He lost to Yair Rodriguez in a fight that, let's be honest, he was winning up until the last second when he got knocked out by that crazy elbow. He returned 7 months later after what was a pretty bad knockout. He returned, knocked out Renato Moicano, knocked out Frankie Edgar, and then he lost to Brian Ortega, beat Dan Ige, had the title shot against Volkanovski last time out, of course. It was pretty badly beaten in that one. And then obviously lost to Max Holloway yesterday. But I think we need to appreciate Korean Zombie for who he was, what he was. And he's just a game fighter, Korean Zombie. And, I just want to say, happy retirement to Korean Zombie. I'm glad that he is retiring in a way because he was taking a lot of damage in those last few fights. But just appreciate Zombie for what he was. I don't think we'll get, someone like Zombie for a long period of time going forwards. But, it is what it is. Father time waits for no man, and now we have to sort of look ahead to the young blood of the division, as it were. With that being said, let's look at what's next for Max Holloway. It's very difficult. He's obviously got 3 losses, with the most recent one coming in dominant fashion to the champion Alexander Volkanovski. He's beaten number 2, Yair Rodriguez. He's beaten number 3, Brian Ortega. He's beaten number 4, Arnold Allen. He's beaten number 7, Calvin Kattar. He's now beaten number 8, Chan Sung Young. And I don't think he's fighting as far down as number 9, 10, 11, 12, that kind of range. There's not a sort of clear and obvious young talent coming through. You've got Movsar Evelev, but that's a risky fight for Holloway. And no real gain. Evelev is ranked number 10. The most clear fight for me is Ilia Topuria. With that being said, I think that Ilia Topuria is probably going to be next for Alexander Volkanovski. It's very difficult. Volkanovski may, depending on how the October fight goes between Charles and Islam, he may go up and compete for featherweight again, which then frees up Max to fight Ilia Topuria. But I can see Max Holloway having being forced to take a prolonged period of time out of the sport, just to sort of almost let the division kind of settle, as it were. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what's next for Max. But a really phenomenal performance by Holloway, and an important one for Holloway, I think. Moving into the co-main event, this was a highly contentious fight. It was a very well thought out fight between Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann. I actually forgot on my brief preview last week that these two had fought just, 2 or 3 fights ago. I would argue that, I don't quite know why they fought so soon after they last fought. Ryan Spann versus Anthony Smith, Fight Night main event, September the 18th. 2021, and now they're fighting less than 2 years later again. Smith coming off 2 straight losses to Ankalaev and Johnny Walker last time out, and Ryan Spann coming off 2 wins, Iron Cutelaba and Dominic Reyes, and then a loss to Nikita Krylov. It is what it is. The fight happened. Very close fight. I think the first round with Anthony Smith, he couldn't miss. He was very, very accurate in that first round. Not only was he accurate, but he stung Ryan Spann a lot. The jab was working well. The low kick was, I think, knocked Spann off his feet a couple of times. But that second round was just utter domination by Ryan Spann. He obviously caught Anthony Smith and blew the eye up. And I thought it would be over. I thought Anthony Smith, he wasn't getting back to his feet when he had the opportunity to. Good work by Ryan Spann to kind of jump on him straight away, then give him space to get up. But the third round for me is the one that kind of obviously won Anthony Smith the fight. It was 1-1, I think, going into the final round. For me, Ryan Spann just didn't do enough in that third and final round. He threw a lot, but he didn't land a lot. The official stats show that he threw 86 punches and only landed 27, as opposed to Anthony Smith, who threw 69. So not, 17 less punches thrown, but he landed 45. It was a 65% sort of significant strikes landed. What I would say is that I don't think that the decision was that contentious. Ryan Spann had his opponent hurt. He could have easily just, emptied the tank in that third and final round. Anthony Smith is not known as a knockout puncher. I think his last knockout, he got a doctor stoppage TKO against Jimmy Crute, but obviously that was with the foot injury, the leg injury. Probably his last legitimate knockout was Mauricio Shogun Rua back in 2018. So he's not known as a knockout puncher, and Ryan Spann isn't known to be someone that's easily knocked out. Spann hasn't been knocked out since he was knocked out by Johnny Walker in 2020. So I think Ryan Spann could have just gone out there and emptied the tank and really, gone for the finish. Again, we always have to ask what's next for each man. Anthony Smith, I want to see him. I don't think any of these men are going to be in and around the title picture anytime soon, based on probably yesterday's performance alone, but also what we know about each man. For me, a perfect fight would be Anthony Smith versus Khalil Roundtree in the main event of a fight night. Khalil obviously called for it last time out when he beat Chris Daukaus. For Ryan Spann, I don't know what you do with Ryan Spann. Does he become a gatekeeper to the top 15? Most probably. Don't think either of these guys really change positions in the rankings unless maybe Khalil Roundtree jumps ahead of Ryan Spann. But I don't think the win was significant enough for Anthony Smith to jump above Nikita Krylov. And for Smith, like I say, I want to see him face Khalil Roundtree in a main event because everyone above him, I think, pretty handily beats him. Krylov, Walker's obviously beat him recently. Rakic is coming back from that injury. That's a possibility. Blachowicz, Pereira, Ankalaev, and Jiri Prochazka. It's difficult for both men. They're both at the twilight of their careers, really, and ultimately, I think I don't think the fight was that contentious, in my opinion. There's two more fights I just want to kind of touch on. I just want to touch on the fact that Giga Chikadze was back in the win column after his pretty dominant loss to Calvin Kattar. Chikadze looked like the real deal. He lost on the Contender Series. He went on a 7-fight winning streak, including wins over Cub Swanson, Edson Barboza. Edson Barboza in the main event. Obviously, that was a striker's dream. He then had the main event against Calvin Kattar, where he was battered. I think the 50-45, 50-45, and 50-44 in that one. That was January 2022. He's taken a year and 8 months out, year and 7 months out. Returns against Alex Caceres, who I think it was a good fight. I think it was a logical fight as well. Caceres obviously coming off the win over Julian Erosa and then the win over Daniel Pineda. They're back-to-back victories for Bruce Leroy. I think he was just outstruck by Giga Chikadze. Simply put, I thought he was just Chikadze. Just looked better. He's back in the win column now. Brief look at what might be next for Giga Chikadze. Maybe a Josh Emmett, maybe an Arnold Allen. I think that fight makes a lot of sense. Arnold obviously coming off the loss to Holloway. I think he kind of due a big fight. Arnold, we don't want him to, from a British perspective at least, we don't want him to drop too far down the rankings. But Giga, ranked 9, will probably take Zombie's eighth ranking, so eighth versus fourth. I think that's a pretty logical fight for both men. And the other fight that I wanted to touch on, Erin Blanchfield defeats Talia Santos via unanimous decision. I'll be honest, I picked Santos in this one. I believe that Erin Blanchfield is probably one of the better fighters in the world at the moment at flyweight, but I picked Santos in this one, thinking that, are we just buying into the hype of Erin Blanchfield? Santos is obviously coming off a very close loss, as it were, a narrow loss to the then champion Valentina Shevchenko. Are we not putting enough sort of plaudits on Talia Santos? What played out was a lot of what I think we expected heading into the fight. I think Erin Blanchfield was there with the volume that we expected her to shoot for the takedown. She actually went none for 14 on the takedown, but she did a lot of controlling up against the fence in this fight. That second round, 4 minutes and 1 control time, but only landed 9 significant strikes, 34 overall strikes. The fight is what it is. I just really think that the flyweight division is hot right now. The difficult thing for the winner of this one, whether it would have been Santos or Blanchfield, is you've got a massive fight this weekend. I'll preview it. I'll preview it a little bit later in the show. But you've got Manon Fiorot welcoming Rose Namajunas to the flyweight division. The winner of that is more than deserving of a title shot. If it's Manon Fiorot, I think Rose Namajunas needs another win. But the thing is, Erin Blanchfield is now more than deserving of a title shot as well. It's very difficult. And obviously, Erin Blanchfield extended her winning run in the UFC to 6 now, with 3 finishes, 3 decisions, 3 finishes. Just beat a top contender in Talia Santos. But you've got the issue of, first of all, like I said, Manon Fiorot versus Rose Namajunas this weekend. You've then got the issue of Shevchenko versus Grasso next month. Now, if Shevchenko wins that, there's a potential of a trilogy fight. And if Grasso wins it, obviously opens up the division ever so slightly more. But it's going to be a lot of sitting out and waiting, similar to what I spoke about with Max Holloway. I think it's going to be a lot of sitting out and waiting for either Erin Blanchfield or Manon Fiorot if she wins next weekend. Going into the world of boxing, Oleksandr Usyk versus Daniel Dubois for WBA, IBF, WBO, and IBO world heavyweight titles. The disappointing thing with this is it went extremely under the radar until it kind of didn't, if that makes sense. I didn't see an awful lot of people picking up on this fight. It was in Poland, so it was, maybe slightly out of the public eye, as it were, but the official result is Oleksandr Usyk wins by 9th round TKO over Britain's Daniel Dubois, handing Dubois his second loss, second by finish. Obviously lost to Joe Joyce back in 2020. This fight comes with a little sort of asterisk with it, which is, well, I mean, 2 asterisks. For me, it's the fight that no one really wanted to see. Everyone wanted to see Usyk versus Fury. Fury's off having a crazy boxing match with Francis Ngannou in a couple of months, and Usyk's fighting is mandatory in Daniel Dubois. The contentious kind of asterisk with this one is that Dubois in the 5th round, I'll be honest, I looked away for a few seconds and saw Usyk on the floor and thought that he'd been dropped. What actually happened was deemed a low blow from Daniel Dubois on Oleksandr Usyk. Plenty of people had their say on this and whether it should be a low blow or whether it was actually a legal shot. I personally think it was a low blow. There's, you've got Amir Khan coming out. I'm just scrolling through through Twitter, Amir Khan coming out said it was never a low blow. Liam Smith saying it was a low blow. From what I believe, Frank Warren and Frank Warren will be appealing the decision, the loss for Daniel Dubois. It won't be overturned. I don't think it'll be a no contest, and it's just a little bit of a bad look for boxing, really. I'll share my screen if I can now. I just want to show you. This is sorry to the audio listeners, but this is the sort of shot for those who have seen a legal punch. Oleksandr Usyk's promoter responds to Daniel Dubois' body shot low blow controversy. This is the sort of still that you want to be looking at. Here, it's it's difficult, and in the moment, the referee can't really, these guys, despite the fact that heavyweights are quick, the referee can't see absolutely everything. What I want is for I don't think that the decision, will be overturned. I really don't think that'll happen. But we've, now we can just move on from it. Daniel Dubois is, I can't even remember how old Daniel Dubois is, but I know that he's young. He's 25 years old, and he's already fought for a world title. Didn't go his way. It is what it is. He comes back, he rebuilds, and he probably wins a world title in 5 to 6 years. He'll be given a series of knockovers to knock out, 19 wins, 18 knockouts, one decision, and that one decision was against Kevin Johnson, a guy who is notoriously difficult to finish. He's got 18 losses by finish. By decision, and only 3 via finish. And you look at who those 3 guys that finished him are. You've got Martin Bakole, Petra Milias, and an individual called Anthony Joshua. So, notoriously hard to finish. But, I just want to, I think we're all just praying and hoping now that, Fury will get through Ngannou, and then let's just pray and hope that Fury Usyk beginning of next year. We've got Joe Joyce versus Zhilei Zhang this weekend from the OVO at Wembley, or Joe Joyce versus Zhang 2. Obviously, that one ended with Joe Joyce being, I think, TKO'd in that doctor stoppage in the 6th round. Zhang, I think, surprised Joyce massively in that one. We'll see how that one goes this weekend. Anthony Yard's back in action after his, I say, valiant effort against Artur Beterbiev last time out in January. He's taken on Ricky Summers. Yard will run through Ricky Summers like a hot knife through butter. But I think that's pretty much the only thing that's really going on this weekend in the world of boxing. Let me just double check, because we haven't. It's quite a slow. Boxing has taken a bit of a slow. It's a slow uptake, really. Apologies. We've got Smith versus Eubank too. This weekend. This upcoming. This Smith versus Eubank too. Eubank Jr. too. Sorry. That's a really, really good fight. You got Michaela Meyer on the card as well. I think you got Dan Azim on the card. Florian Marquez on the card, which is always fun. Frazer Clark versus Dave Allen. But that fight ended in controversy. Was it an elbow? Was it a legitimate shot by Liam Smith last time out? We'll find out in Manchester this weekend. Was it legit? Was it not? We'll find out who the better fighter is this weekend. But now going ahead to focus on all things UFC this weekend, live from Paris. If you remember last year, I think on the same date, or maybe the 3rd of September last year, Cyril Gane and Tai Tuivasa put on that phenomenal fight last time out, or the first time that the UFC had gone to Paris. We had Whitaker just batter Marvin Vettori. Nathaniel Wood battered Giles Jourdain. Nasrat Haqparast got the win against John McDessie in that fight, if you remember it, on that fight night card. Sorry, really good fight night card, really good crowd. Cyril Gane now returns for the first time since March, when he obviously lost to John Jones in convincing, dominant fashion, to take on the informed Sergey Spivak. Now, this isn't going to be an easy fight for Cyril Gane. Sergey Spivak, we know what he wants to do. He wants to get in there. He wants to take his opponent down. He wants to maul them. He wasn't able to do it against Tom Aspinall when they fought in September of 2021. So almost, well, when he goes in there, it'll be almost 2 years to the day. But he did it against Greg Hardy. He did it against Augusto Sakai, and he choked out Derek Lewis last time out in the first round. What is Cyril Gane's takedown defense like? We will certainly see his takedown defense tested on Saturday night. Sergey Spivak is obviously the informed man. I think Cyril Gane, with the French crowd behind him, cruises to a victory. Do I think he finishes Sergey Spivak? I don't. I really don't. I think Sergey Spivak he's tough to get out of there. The only guy that's finished him in his UFC career, at least, is Walt Harris finished him early on, and Tom Aspinall. But yeah, the only person in recent times that's finished him is Tom Aspinall, who will, from what we understand, be sat ringside and will be probably facing off with the winner of this fight. That's an exciting prospect, whether it be Gane or Spivak again. I think Tom Aspinall, will get in the octagon. He'll at least be sat octagon side, and it's exciting. Talking about exciting, we've got France's own Manon Fiorot, as I alluded to earlier, taking on Rose Namajunas. Now, Fiorot, undefeated in the UFC, hasn't lost since her professional debut against Leah McCourt back in 2018. She's legit. She's 5-0 in the UFC, and some of the names on her, Victoria Leonardo, standing TKO. Tabitha Ricci, who, that's a win that's aged really well. Ricci's looked really good. She's 4-0 since losing to Manon Fiorot. Standing TKO again. Maya Bono Silva, again, a victory that's aged really well. Unanimous decision. Jennifer Maia, Caitlin Chikagian in October last year. So she's taken almost a year out of action. She welcomes Rose Namajunas to the 125-pound division. Rose is coming off that instantly forgettable, dreadful, awful performance against Carla Esparza last time out. With that being said, we did see her compete in a grappling, Fury Pro Grappling 6 against Gillian Robertson, and she looked small. And Gillian Robertson's now someone that makes a straw weight. What kind of impact is the weight going to play on this one? I'm not quite sure. I think we'll see a stand-up game, of course, for Manon Fiorot. I've got an article coming out early this week about Manon Fiorot's 3 keys to victory in this fight. I think Rose will try and wrestle in this fight. Manon Fiorot is a ferocious striker. She's dangerous on the feet. She's dangerous with the hands. She's dangerous with the kicks. She knows how to keep a fight long. She lands 6.58 strikes per minute, as opposed to Rose, who lands 3.66. So she's active. A takedown defense is 83%. So it's going to be difficult to get her to the floor if that's Rose Namajunas' game. She was taken down once by Jennifer Maia, and that's the only time she's been taken down in a UFC career thus far. It's a really competitive fight with massive ramifications, and I'm excited for that, for it, as you can probably tell. Benoit Saint-Denis takes on Thiago Moises. Obviously, Saint-Denis lost his UFC debut. I think that was on short notice. Since then, has gone 3-0 with 3 finishes. Really fun fighter. Where's Thiago Moises at? We saw him as a potential title contender. He's 2-0 in his last 2 with 2 finishes. That should be a great fight. Volkan Ozdemir takes on Bogdan Guskov. Guskov taking the fight on on short notice after Ozdemir was scheduled to fight. I can't remember his name. Murazov's had to withdraw from that one, so Ozdemir gets a late notice replacement. William Gomis obviously returns. He had a lot of hype coming into the fight, coming into his debut, sorry, which was of course on that Paris card last year. Decisioned again in April of this year. He takes on Lucas Almeida. I'm going to pause on the next fight for a second because I want to go into talk about that one in a little bit more detail. But the fight that's, according to Tapology, the fight that's opening up the card, Farad Barshat versus Clyden Rodriguez. Barshat looks really good, really, really good. You know, he's won on the Contender Series. He beat Damon Blackshear in his full debut on UFC 285. He now competes in France. He certainly wanted to keep an eye out for. Reece McKee back in the UFC. Lovely little rhyme there. And more than deserved. Now, Reece McKee, if you remember, he's the guy that joined the UFC on very late notice to face Khamzat Chimaev and didn't land a glove on him. Well, yeah, it is what it is. That's Khamzat Chimaev. He then took on Alex Morono. Alex Morono at the time, I believe, was on a very good run of form. Yeah, he'd won three out of his last four, including wins over Kenyan Song, Zach Otto, and Max Griffin. He lost to Chaos Williams. Then he took on Reece McKee, beat Reece McKee by decision. Then he lost to Anthony Pettis by decision. But then he went on a 4-fight winning streak after that. And then Reece McKee was cut from the UFC, cut almost back to Cage Warriors. Since then, he's gone 3-0, 3 finishes, 2 in the third round, 1 in the fourth round last time out against Judo Jimmy Warhead. Picked up the welterweight champion, the welterweight belt, and he's back in the UFC now. More than deserving, Reece McKee. Skeletor, 27 years of age. He's already made that UFC walk, so he's not going to have any UFC jitters. And I think he's where he believes that he should be. He's taking on Ange Lusa, coming off the winner over AJ Fletcher last time out on the Usman Edwards 2 card in August of last year. Usman Edwards 2, August of last year, Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah. That should be a great fight. Going back to the fight that I kind of skipped over earlier, Yanis Gemori versus Conor Loughran. This is an exciting one. Loughran is 8-0 with 7 finishes and a decision. He's finished his last 4 fights, all in Cage Warriors. Picked up the Cage Warriors bantamweight, the vacant Cage Warriors bantamweight championship. He beat Dylan Hazan, who was undefeated at the time. Team Calbon, Darren Till, under the tutelage of Colin Herring, Darren Till, Mike Grundy, Terry Etam, of course, Tom Aspinall. All these guys have come through Team Carbon. He's being handed the Desert Warrior, Francis the Desert Warrior, Gamori. Apologies if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Who is legitimate? He's fought on UAE Warriors. He's had his last 3 fights in Brave. He's finished his last 2 fights. And he's 12-1. He's highly experienced. He's only 28 and he's already had 13 fights. He hasn't lost since 2015. This has got Fight of the Night for me written all over it. And it's opening up the main card, which is kind of speaks volumes as to how the UFC see Loughran. Really good fight. Definitely keep an eye out for that one. But for me, it's all about the co-main event and the main event. I think that's really, they really want to keep an eye out for, especially that co-main event because it's got such big ramifications. Elsewhere this week, obviously the Contender Series continues. We'll have all our picks and results on MMA Sucker for that. We've got an LFA card this weekend, but from Brazil, just packed full of South American talent. And then on the card on the show next week, I'll be sat down to review the week that was from Paris. Probably touch on Zhang versus Joyce as well. Now that I'm doing the show on my own, I'll be able to get a lot more sort of boxing content out there because I've got a lot more time. And then I'll be looking ahead to the blockbuster if you could say that, UFC 293 card live from Sydney, Australia. I've got a lot to say on that card. It looks like a good card, but let's just say I've got a lot to say on the card. So as always, guys, really appreciate you listening. Really appreciate your time. Go and follow MMA Sucker on Twitter. I'm on Twitter as well at Frazer Krohn MMA. All the links will be down below. We are sponsored by Athletic Greens, AG1 by Athletic Greens. So I'll drop our affiliate link in there below. If you buy Athletic Greens, if you do any of that stuff, follow our link. It really helps out the show. And I'm beginning to get used to doing the show on my own a little bit more now. Going to try and bring in more features and whatnot. But yeah, like I said, thanks for listening, guys. Take it easy, and I'll speak to you all next week.